I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with the dude and Golan. It's interesting. It's sort of amazing that the Melania documentary made a little over $7 million, best box office opening for a documentary in over 10 years. And what's interesting about it, the predictions were $1 to $5 million and has a critic score of 11%. Much like polling, it's 100% off. And I think they do it by pre-ticket sales sometimes go on. But
Yeah.
in this case, as we know, Republicans go to the vote on the same day. They bought their tickets on the same day or the day later or Sunday.
Well, there was a record number of on-the-spot ticket sales as opposed to pre-sales. And just so the audience understands the disparity, it did go from 7% amongst the critics to 98% amongst viewers.
And it goes to show how out of touch Hollywood is. And it also goes to show you that we can't actually get a gauge of any sort of polling no matter what. I mean, this should be the metric for polling right now, is if you have 99% of an audience enjoying it and the critics being at 6%.
We see this a couple of times with there was a number of different movies where the critics didn't like it and they gave it a rotten score, but the audiences loved it. So it's not that polling is off, it's just that critics are captured with the
No, but I was more referring to the data of how much money it would make. That's a huge difference, especially for a documentary to say 1 million, some people, and then it to do 7 million. That's a monster number. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's more for Golan Finance movies. He's our movie expert.
Yeah. It doesn't take an expert, but on this, they were off. But again, but no, to your point though, what's her name? Michelle Obama.
What's her name is right.
She had a 98. She had it reversed, sort of, not fully, but she was like 98% with the critics, but a 53% with CineScore. So it's just very interesting. It just goes to show you how out of touch they are.
Yeah, look, and it also proves that it only goes in one direction. The critics always go leaning left and hate anything conservative, and the audience is honest. The audience is crowdsourcing, and critics is just a few critics. So it's way more reliable. And I rely on the Rotten Tomatoes audience score, not the critics score. The critics are always off.
Yeah, it's interesting. That movie House of, by the way, go on just for a second. House of Dynamite got really good I can't stay off this movie. Got really good Rotten Tomatoes scores, and I'm like, who the hell is watching this movie? House of Dynamite, one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But go on just to explain to people, documentaries tend to make $10 million, right?
$10 million
at best.
If you are lucky.
If you are lucky, they make Ben Stein's, Expelled No Intelligence Allowed did amazing at the box office, shattering a lot of records in itself. But $7 million is exceptional for a documentary.
It's exceptional for a documentary as an overall, and it is certainly exceptional for a documentary in its opening week. And most documentaries, and this is absolutely documented, never break $1 million at the box office. And if they have any kind of limited or niche kind of theatrical release, they don't even get close to it. There are movies that gross, if they're lucky, tens of thousands of dollars. The ones that are really pushed by the media and pushed by all the critics that you're talking about, like the RBG documentary, right? The Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary, that made $14 million worldwide and was hailed as one of the strongest theatrical documentary performers in the millennia and blah, 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 blah. And that was its entire run. In this opening weekend, we went over 7. So I think
but also it's important to point out, because I think men will appreciate this a little more than you, is that Matt Walsh's documentary also did fantastic, which goes to Guy Goldstein's point last week on the show, which is there is a huge yearning and wanting for Republican documentaries. I mean, I think it's insane that
I think content in general, I wouldn't restrict it just to documentaries.
No. I'm just using that as an example.
But there's a reason why faith-based films do well. There's a reason why God's Not Dead broke 100 million. There's a reason why even movies that are objectively bad, sorry guys, like The War Room, do exceptionally well. Because it's just like, I guess I'll go see The Shack. Because what the hell else am I going to do? Go watch something where they woke lecture at me? So I don't think it's just documentaries. I think it's actually just content. that
Yeah,
people are hungry for.
let me amend what I said. Yes, obviously with Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel, there's tons
Broke
of
records.
movies that
Passion, most
yeah.
successful independent film of all time, and on and on and on.
Anyways, go ahead, man.
Yeah, people are hungry for real, unbiased, good content. So, when you look at some of these documentaries, like there's the guy who lived with the bears until the bears ate him. That thing,
Yeah.
Grizzly Man.
that was it. So there are documentaries and other films out there, like you mentioned, Passion of the Christ and whatever, that people just want to see. They're not interested in seeing a woke Snow White, and that movie flopped because I actually thought of something, and Golan, we should look into this. Judah, Jason, everybody should get on this. There should be a contract that the movie studios force actors to sign that they
Okay, so
cannot.
can I explain to you what happened?
Hang on. Before you do that, I just want to point out, because he brought it up, because Grizzly Man is a perfect example of what we're talking about. Okay. Grizzly Man, which is one of the most, you just named it. And Men's not a movie person necessarily. Grizzly Man's one of the most famous documentaries of all time. Do you know what its opening weekend was?
$1.5 million.
Less than $270,000. Do you know what its overall box office
Wow.
was?
We're going on that, maybe 1.2 million.
Overall, no, because it stuck around. It was really popular. People were talking. It became a talking point. People were like, remember the bear ate the guy there? Little over $4 million. Total box office. So I just want you to understand what these numbers are.
So there's 2 points to be made, but I want to get to Men's point. I know exactly what he was going to say is that they have to have a contract where the stars don't talk, and because it's killing the movies on social media. So a friend of mine in the industry explained exactly what you're bringing up. Studios used to control everything that came out of the stars' mouths, right?
They could
And
be
when
fined if they went outside the line.
right. So in order to save money, in a sense, when social media started coming out, they handed over the reins, and said, build up your own social media accounts and your own social media profiles. And we won't handle that stuff anymore. That's on you. And to do a lot of that stuff, man. So in a sense, they've killed themselves by allowing those social media. And if you think a studio is going to be able to say to somebody right now, you know what, turn off that
It's
social
not turn
media.
off your social media. It's you should not be wading into politics.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. There's no social justice warriors going on here. You could post about your family, your friends, your dog, or your movie, but that's it.
No,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't, by the way, it shouldn't even be that. It shouldn't even be that. Do you know the way this worked? And I'll tell you from the inside, the way this worked was that they basically were saying, we want people who have free marketing and free advertising at their fingertips. If you have millions of followers and you're talking to, if Brad Pitt was tweeting and when F1 came out, Brad Pitt just kept texting about F1, people would go see F1 more because he just basically got free marketing to millions of people who follow him. And many of these people do just that. They talk about their album, they talk about their music, they talk about their TV show, and then they shut the F up because all they care about is getting people's butts into seats. The problem is all these people who now were given the keys to the kingdom, like, hey, you're in charge of marketing. They were like, I can talk to everybody
Right. You're in
all at
charge of your
once.
own marketing. And it came
Yeah,
back to bite them royally in the
big time.
you know what. But I think it's also important to point out that $7 million today opening is when you compare that to the past, because obviously movies are not doing as well, go along.
Right.
7 million is massive. That would be the equivalent, I want to say, of 15 years ago of essentially $16 million, a $16 million opening. And people
I would
forget.
say that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge number that people are not talking about. The fact that she could open up a movie, a documentary or movie for $7 million. I mean, you're talking about some massive Hollywood flops that have not made 7 million, and many that haven't made in its opening weekend. So
Look, I'll tell you, one of the worst movies I've ever seen was a movie, unfortunately, with a lot of people that I like in it, but two Oscar winners, directed by and produced by the guys who made the John Wick franchise, thing called Love Hurts. It opened to $1 million less than Melania movie did, and it had about $100 million worth of marketing behind it. Just to be clear, you're talking about an unheard of number. Again, of this decade, it's not happened. And it's unheard of even amongst the very rarefied air of the Michael Jackson doc or some of the Michael Moore docs that broke records and everything else. This is still a shooting star in the sky. when you see this kind of opening for a documentary.
Yeah.
So Melania, I think, can call herself a movie star at this point.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Let's move on a little bit. I think, men, one of the smartest things Trump did was bringing Tom Homan into Minnesota. As we brought up on Friday's show, it's like that song by Johnny Cash, When the Man Comes Around. And he didn't bring him in on Friday. He brought him in, but we discussed, he brought him in, I want to say last Monday. It's been really quiet since last Monday. Not an easy guy to negotiate with. I wouldn't mind if they sent them to Iran to negotiate with Iranians, but he went there, man, and everybody has sort of shut up.
Yeah, they had to pivot. It was just the rhetoric was getting out of control. I agreed with everything they were doing. I thought that they should actually double down and send in twice as many agents and really flood the place. But level-headeds prevailed, and Tom Homan is in, and supposedly they are working with him to do chain of custody to get the criminals straight from the jails out to ICE. That'll alleviate a lot of the stress that ICE has in rounding these people up. So I think it's a good move. It's a good move. I wouldn't.
I was
it
there
wasn't
with
my
you, by the
first.
way. Just for the record, I agreed with you. I would, if you would have said to me like that same thing, I would have been like, heck, double down. If you're in this much trouble, double down anyways. What the heck's the difference? You're not going to win this PR battle, man. Just double down, triple down, do whatever you can. Get everybody out.
And Trump just came out and he said, you know what? We're not going to go into Democrat-run cities if they don't want us as far as cleaning up the crime. You want to live in squalor and crime? By all means, go do it. He'll only go to cities that are asking for help. And I think that's great as well. In the beginning, I liked it when he cleaned up Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C. is a little different because it's in
Smaller.
the District of Columbia. It's got special designation, but
it's the special needs district.
It is a special needs district. It did serve as an example of what can be done. You can clean up Detroit. You can clean up Chicago. And it was important to set that example, but it's not worth the squeeze is not worth the juice. It's not worth him blowing up the midterms and getting into fights with everybody because these liberals and the ones that I'm talking about are like the deranged lunatics that can't see the benefit in anything the man does.
Everybody at the Grammys, pretty much, minus Emily
talk
Austin.
about Billie Eilish saying, you can't live on stolen land while she owns a $7 million Malibu beach house.
$14 million house.
$14 million that people are coming and they want to show up and stay there. Listen, it's stolen land. Let me take it.
That would be really an ingenious move by anybody because everybody knows Golan where she lives. It doesn't take that much. They should literally do like, instead of Star Tours, if people are not familiar with what Star Tours is, it's like you get on Hollywood and Hollywood Boulevard, you get on this little van that's open and you go by stars' houses, right? That would be great if we started like a deport Billie Eilish van. And we just had all day long people going to Billie Eilish's house or with illegals on it, actually.
There you go. There's a great movie by Miguel Arteta called Star Maps, which has a major component of this, but it really is a thing. If you've ever been in Hollywood, there are just guys on the side of the street being like, here's a map, and literally everybody who's a movie star, their house is signed on the map. You just go and you stare at it.
It's the weirdest thing.
It's the weirdest thing.
It is. And by the way, if you are just tuning in, you are listening via audio. We also are on Rumble every day at 1:30. And David in the rant pointed out that he too is on one of those one time. David, I'll be honest, I too was on because I had to do it for a work type thing, but it wasn't the Star Tours, like where you visited their house. It was like where you visited like studios and like the Hollywood Bowl. And
that's a little better because it doesn't feel like you're just a stalker with a map.
Can I tell you something? It still feels like it's still there's nothing like going to an empty Hollywood Bowl and you're like, okay, I don't even enjoy the Hollywood Bowl when there are people performing. I like it. I actually enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it more being there with nobody performing. But man, I want to move on.
Can I just say something about this? Because there's a brilliance to it, to what he's done here. What Mend is talking about, this idea of only going into cities that ask for federal help. I just want to think about this for a second as like an incentive design concept. It's like really politically smart. These cities, these Democrat cities, by the way, I'm talking about the ones who now are saying, don't come in here, don't help me, I'll fight against you, I'm not going to cooperate, blah, 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 blah. They have been demanding unlimited federal money, unlimited tolerance, zero accountability, all of this, and they are sabotaging law enforcement. Or they're doing the sanctuary city policy stuff. They're vilifying Trump. They're vilifying all the institutions that are actually federally mandated. Half the time they're vilifying their own. Suddenly they're like, our police are the best, and the federals are. A second ago they were also telling us to defund their own police. So we know they're full of it. But I love the idea of having Trump just go, you know what? Why don't you go have crime explode? Why don't you go have your quality of life collapse? This is great. When it's done and you're crying about it, you demand rescue. Sorry, it might be too little too late. We'll see what happens. By that point, all the cities that have wanted help will be like little utopias, the little Pleasantvilles, all that kind of thing. And the contrast is going to be the thing that really makes the difference. Think about that. If you see a city that is really clean, you're talking about crime is gone. You're talking about the streets are clean. It's stabilized. Businesses are blooming. Families feel safe, all that. And the city next door is spiraling under the same BS that they're doing with the sanctuary city nonsense stuff. You can't spin that. That difference is impossible to spin away. No press conference, no matter how many nostrums and how many liberal sentences you say or the appropriate phrasing will never make it look like anything except you have a failed state and they have a blossoming society.
Yeah, there's only
I think
one
it's a great
problem
idea.
with that. There's only one problem with that, and we've discussed it, is
Yeah.
I agree with him. I agree with Mend, and I agree with the president on this. The problem is how quickly it spreads. That's really where the problem is. And Mend, as we've discussed, this is a military style op that the left has engineered and is using. So this isn't as simple as they are going to go to the next town, the next town, the next town. They're going to go to every town. Their signal chats will be 10,000 people. And I think this is what really frustrates a lot of people. Like we brought up the other day with Don Lemon getting arrested
Wait,
is
can I ask you a question, Judah? Do you think that if
no.
the left is really going to, I'm doing it anyway, if you think the left is really going to weaponize this sort of nonsense, then maybe it's time to enforce borders in a different way in the United States because
I,
you're asking for this sort of thing.
I,
So now, if you want to go across the border, I'm sorry, this is a different state. You don't get to come here. Your state is in disrepair. I'm sorry, stay there. It's on fire. Enjoy Escape from LA. Over here, we're having a good time. We're all barbecuing. You're not allowed in. You try to get in. I don't know what happens when you try to climb over the fence. I think there might be that people keep talking about civil war, civil war. How about instead of civil war, it's just a little bit of like when the brother and the sister put the rope across the middle of the room. It's like, that's your side. This is our side. I don't think it's a terrible thing.
There's two things. One is the statement that Billie Eilish made that you can't live on stolen land, and also that borders don't exist, contradict each other.
Of course
You
they do.
can't believe in borders, but then believe that somehow it's stolen land. Either there are borders and it's somebody's land and it's somebody's sovereign country, or there isn't borders and it's not stolen land, right? So that's just ridiculous. But I did see on Patrick McDavid's podcast, they have screenshots of advertisements on Craigslist where they're paying between $6,000 and $12,000 a week to paid agitators. Depending on how much chaos you could create in a city, that's how they'll pay you more. Back to the beginning of this, and we've said this a zillion times, is they need to round these guys up, find out who's funding them, and take down the whole network. You can't just go after the little street protesters, the Alex Pritties and the Renee Goods, and expect to get anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to get backlash from all these lunatics that think that these agitators' lives are more important than all the dead kids and raped kids that we have in our country by these illegals.
We don't have to pretend we don't know, though. We know that Neville Royce Singham was paying for half of this stuff. We know that the Soros, Foundation is paying for half of this
It's
stuff.
more than that. It's all the NGOs, the nonprofits that they employ, that they use, that facilitate
they're
these boots on
laundering the
ground.
money
It's an
into.
army. It's an insurrection. And if you're going to talk about the Mexican government is involved in it, they're using their embassies throughout the country. They have a TV show coming out of Mexico that on cable networks or whatever, and it's called something to the effect of the the illegal migrant or whatever, and it incites them against this country. So they know that they're here. They're inciting them, trying to rile them up, and this is from the Mexican government. So, I mean, literally, they need to get to the bottom of it, take down the entire network, and not just go after the little ant creatures at the bottom of the totem pole.
Well, that's what I brought up the other day. It was this was what I didn't care about the Don Lemon thing. Not saying I don't want Don Lemon arrested, but he's at the bottom of the totem pole. It's who's funding it. And if we all know who's funding it, that's what is the most maddening thing. It's not like we're like saying who is Waldo and where's Waldo. We know who these people are. We know who the Alex Soros, Neville Royce Ingham, and a group of, and You know what, Mend? Your favorite person that was mentioned in the Epstein files at least 3 times, Reid Hoffman, that column of human sewage that owns LinkedIn, right? It's LinkedIn, I believe, right?
LinkedIn. Yeah.
And, so talk about a guy that should be under a heavy microscope right now.
Yeah. I mean, I saw pictures of Steve Bannon with
But specifically him. I'm just going specifically, we know
Reed,
that
Fat
Reid
Reed
Hoffman
Hoffman. Yeah.
has put a lot of money into this type of stuff. That's why I brought Reid Hoffman up.
Yeah. Look, bottom line is you have people that are pretty much captured by woke mind virus. Look at Mackenzie Scott. Is that her name? The former wife of Jeff Bezos? Mackenzie Phillips, Mackenzie Scott, Mackenzie
No,
something
Can't
or
not
other.
remember.
Mackenzie
No
Phillips.
idea.
Just call her Mackenzie Bezos.
Yeah. She's donating hundreds of millions of dollars to these radical groups,
Yeah.
DEI and all this other nonsense. There's lots of these people out there. And then if we're going to go down this rabbit hole of the Mexican government being involved, the Chinese government being involved, the Chinese have about 1 million Chinese that came here on birth visas. So the mom came here pregnant, had the kid, went back to China, raised in China. There's 1 million of them now that can vote from China. They have nothing to do with America. So like all of these things taking into a collective account, and then you look into all the fraud that's going on with, the daycare centers, and now it's hospice care and all these other insane things that we have going on. You realize we don't really have the democracy that our parents grew up with. This thing is completely manipulated and it's off the rails, off the chain.
Well said. I'm going to move on a little bit. Go on. He brought up a name, Patrick Bet-David, and Patrick Bet-David had on his show Michael Cohen, and so you have to take everything he says with a grain of salt. Everything out of his mouth there's a good chance is a lie, and they were
Cohen.
talking about Michael
Everything out of
Cohen.
Cohen's mouth.
Yeah, everything out
Yeah,
of Michael Cohen's
that's
mouth.
what he's talking about.
Yeah, obviously, everything out of Michael Cohen's mouth. Otherwise, I wouldn't turn on the Patrick Bet-David podcast because that would be listening to 2 hours of lies. And he had Michael Cohen on, and they were talking about, go on, who's the closest to the president? And Patrick Bet-David said, it's got to be our favorite, Rubio. And he said, it's Witkoff. And he was explaining the dynamics of the relationship with Witkoff and Ludnick and it goes back 25 years with Witkoff. You're talking about friends of kids and, just that type
Right.
of thing. And I was sitting there listening to this going, God, this is not the person. And Steve, I got to be honest with you. Witkoff frightens me.
I agree with you. Witkoff is. I just don't understand. Everything he does seems to be wrong. Every time he goes into a negotiation, seems to either fall apart or he agrees to things that make no sense. I do not understand any aspect of what Witkoff thinks he's doing. And every time he walks out of a meeting, bewildered, because I always think he's got to have a plan. He's got to have a plan. There's no way he did that, whatever it is that he did in that particular moment, and he doesn't know where it's going to go. I'm always reminded of that thing. I've talked about it before in a Civil Action. Robert Duvall's character says, never say objection, or excuse me, never ask a question of a witness on the stand unless you know what their answer is going to be. And it feels like Witkoff is just asking questions left and right and being like, really? Okay, great. I just don't understand it. So the fact that Trump trusts him at all, there must be something more to it. There must be some, like you said, a family history, of this or that.
Well,
It's the only explanation.
There is. And I have a lot of people in my family that I've known for 30 years, but I wouldn't go and have them being the envoy to Ukraine and Russia and Israel and everything else.
Exactly.
And it seems like every time Witkoff, there used to be a game show, and you might not remember this game show called Deal or No Deal. I know they've redone it, but it really seems like when Witkoff comes out of something, it's like, yeah, we'll give up our arms. And Witkoff's like, really? And they're like, yeah, 100%, Steve. And he's like, Donald, they sound
like,
really
okay.
sincere. Yeah, they sound, Putin sounded really sincere on this phone call compared to the other 100. And the idea of him negotiating with a country that's lied for the last 47 years, 46 or 47 years, is sort of a joke.
Yeah, but it is. You're actually saying it. You're actually saying
I'm trying
it
to be
perfectly.
nice. I'm really trying to be nice.
I was going to say you're kind of soft shoeing how gullible he seems to be. And again, I kept thinking, because Trump has done this thing before, where he says something, and I go, "Why would you believe that?" Donald. And then he's like, just kidding. And then he like lobs a bomb at them. And he's like, haha, you thought you got me. Okay, great. There's a strategy to it. He lulls you into a false sense of security, all of that stuff. Koff is doing the same thing, except without the haha got you part. He's just falling for it. So the fact that Trump, who seems to be a master when it comes to this sort of trying to get manipulated, and it turns out I'm manipulating you. So you thought you got me and you didn't even realize there was another guy behind you. That's the Trump thing. The fact that he trusts Witkoff after seeing him fail over and over and over again to even strategically walk into a meeting, it's shocking to me. Trump knows better, so I don't get it. Except for we've got history, and I just feel bad for the guy.
Maybe Mend has a different take on this.
I would love to hear it.
I don't. I don't understand what's going on there. There's a simple playbook. The simple playbook was you smash Iran, you empower the United Arab Emirates, and you show the Middle East what could be. And you force Qatar. They're impotent without the US. You force Qatar to stop spreading their anti-West propaganda. Very simple. You deal with that and you sideline Turkey because Turkey is malign. It's malignant. It's just absolute vile. You do that, you crush the Turkish economy like they did when he bought the S-400 missile systems. And you all of a sudden, you've fostered peace in the Middle East. You could do it. It's possible. But they started right, and then they took a wrong turn and another wrong turn, and they've empowered Qatar, this tiny little wart of a country that was diabolically opposed to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates being moderates, right? These guys were the funders of Muslim Brotherhood. And now Saudi Arabia is aligning with Qatar, going against the UAE. What's going on? Why would you allow that to happen?
You know what's interesting is I think both Golan and I are shocked by your response because we really thought you would say something totally different. Golan, am I mistaken?
I was waiting for the thunder, yeah.
And for the people that listen to us via audio, we don't always agree with each other on a lot of these things. And Mend has sort of been more of the patience and wait type of thing. But when you look, Mend, and Witkoff is having a meeting with Iran, and I know people are going to say, Trump is going to bomb Iran before that meeting on Friday, right? And the poly markets, for people that actually believe that, for people that believe that there's going to be, you could make an awful lot of money by believing Trump is playing 100D chess right now, man.
100D chess. That's funny.
I do think he's going to bomb Iran, but I also think, as we saw in Venezuela, he's looking to just do regime modification versus full regime change. But Iran is different. He gave them a red line. They crossed it.
Crossing is putting it mildly.
To assassinate him a couple of times.
Yeah, crossing it is putting it mildly, by the way. Yeah, crossing it is
they slaughtered 30,000 of their own citizens, mostly kids. So I think we're going to see him hit Iran hard. I think Qatar is lobbying.
When do you think that's happening?
Well, they needed to get everything in place.
Yeah, but that's, again, you're setting I'm not disagreeing with you, man, but it almost feels like we keep on pushing the goalposts to the point where I'm terrified of having that meeting on Friday.
He's giving them an offer that they're not going to accept. They got to give up their ballistic missile program and their nuclear program.
Or they'll be like, how about we do none of that, but we'll give you a high five. And Witkoff's like, they had a really good idea.
No, so here's what's going to happen.
That's what scares me.
Here's what's going to happen. The reason that this time is different than the 12-day war is because Iran knows that when the Americans come in this time, they're not going to leave any unfinished business. So their entire missile program is going to be gone. Their entire military infrastructure is going to be gone. All the top leaders are going to be targeted, and their nuclear program, whatever's left of it, is going to be completely decimated. So the Iranians are going to fire everything they got. And you're talking about all the missiles that Iran has and the launchers. Hopefully the Americans and Israelis can take that out as they see it happening. Then you have the Houthis. You have the militias, the Muqtada Sadr, whatever it is, the militias in Iraq that are going to join. That's the dog that didn't bark. They never joined any of these fights. You're going to have Hezbollah do whatever they can. They needed to get enough assets in place. And it's worth noting that during the 12-day war, the U.S. government used up 25% of all THAAD batteries that were ever created, ever bought by the U.S. government. So 25% of our entire stockpile, and not today's stockpile, of every THAAD that was ever created, ever made, was used during that war. And this one's going to be a lot worse. This one's going to be a lot more intense. So how much assets do they actually need to get in place? Do they have enough to actually protect civilian centers in Israel, in Jordan, in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in United Arab Emirates? Do they have enough? So there's a lot of hardware that needs to be put in place. And at the same time, he has Witkoff sitting there saying, we're willing to negotiate. Give up your nuclear weapons, give up your ballistic missiles, and stop supporting terrorism, and we won't kill you all.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was doing an episode last night, Go On of the World According to Ben Stein. We were talking about this, and Ben was, citing Churchill. And I don't remember the exact quote because I'm not Ben Stein. And it was, in a sense, you got to go for it at a certain point. It's like, because I was saying exactly what Mend has said, and a lot of people have been saying the same exact thing. But at a certain point, because here's the thing, here's the calculus. The only way for this to work is for the resistance to believe that something's going to happen. And we got to keep the resistance, who will be the regime change. We got to keep them emboldened as they're hiding right now, scared to death of being found out. We got to give them a glimmer of hope. And the longer this takes for us supposedly to get what we need in place really harms that resistance. And I think, so I just thought it was an interesting point by Ben on that, Go On, that at a certain point, you got to say, the hell with it. Let's do it. And we'll see the consequences.
Yeah, the consequences may be pretty dire. I mean, you did see that they're putting radar detection systems in all the places that that Iran could reach, including with their proxies. And unfortunately, that doesn't mean they're going to be able to stop something. So if Iran decides to, like they did with Israel, they just started launching ballistic missiles a little while ago. One hit my mother's apartment building while she was in it. As you know, the radar detection system is not enough. Israel has this new iron beam system. It's not designed to stop Iranian ballistic missiles, which is the problem. They don't have anything that really can. The Iron Dome doesn't stop Iranian ballistic missiles. The only way to stop those, basically, to shoot them down in the air on the way, and it is incredibly difficult to do. And when they land, no one's ever seen anything like that. What happened in Israel during the last ballistic missile storm coming from Iran was destructive and has scarred the psyche of everyone that came in contact with it, including people that don't get jarred by the daily missiles coming over from Gaza or anything else. So if this really does go to where it can go now, we're talking about Iran has nothing left to lose. It's, if Men's right, it's if you're going to aim for the king, don't miss situation. Because if they do even hesitate for a moment, you're talking about missiles launched at hypersonic or near hypersonic speeds that are going long ranges and are causing unheard of damage. And they can just launch the entire arsenal because what else do they have to lose? So we really have to think deep, deep, deep down whether this is the right thing to do, whether it's the right time, whether we're ready for it, whether all of our allies are ready for it, whether our troops and bases are ready for it, and everything else. This is not something to be taken lightly, although we've waited so long that we've also given them an opportunity to prepare. And I don't like that either.
Well, there's also a report coming out of Gaza, man, a report coming out of Israel that they've been rebuilding. Now, the plan I see...
Who's been rebuilding?
Hamas has been rebuilding.
100%.
Mightily in the last 3 months. And this deal that they have on the table with the UAE is a great deal that Israel wants and America wants, which is the UAE to take over Gaza. And the problem is, in taking over a roach motel, the roaches are really hard to kill. And, so what's happened is from the 6 months when we attacked Iran, they've built up. From the time we've, got the hostages out, thank God, they've rebuilt. So a lot could happen in these 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I think Hamas has reconstituted their ranks, but they don't have all the weaponry that they did before October 7th. But as far as offensively, you got to look at what's been going on in Syria. Israel had open skies between Israel and Iran coming across Syria, but now Turkey has put in radar stations in Syria. So Iran could be notified as soon as those planes leave Israeli airspace, start cruising over Syria. Turkish people, Erdogan, can notify Iran. So there's entire landscape is somewhat changed from what it was when they did the 12-day war.
Like this. It's amazing, right? It's amazing what, really I really wanted just to point that out. Within 3 months, 6 months, how quickly it went from us having total air dominance to that being gone, which is a huge thing, man.
Yeah, and if you've seen any of the videos of during the 12-day war, when Iran was firing, just regular missiles and drones, and then they would have one of these ballistic missiles come through. It made the classic video that you see of a rocket coming and Israel shoots the little thing and it hits it in the sky and it's a nice light show, looks cool. Then you see something come through that looks like an F1 race car fly through all of that and slam into the ground. That's the intercontinental ballistic missiles that those guys have. That's what they're going to fire everything they got during this round. And you don't know what the militias in Iraq, the Houthis, and all these other guys, when they decide to just shoot their shot and give it their all, how
Yeah,
is that going to
it's like
overwhelm us?
Armageddon.
And the Iranians have also learned how many it took to overwhelm the system because they saw what got through, and they had spies throughout telling them where they lay it, how they got through. So they've learned from that war as well. You can't just assume that the entire landscape is the same thing as it was during the 12-day war.
I don't even think you could assume it. I think we know it's not.
It's not.
And Golan, I just want to quickly move on to what he's talking about. I just think this is extremely complicated for anybody to say. I hear like generals on Fox News. I see what people write. Nobody knows anything right now. I got to be honest. I'm not the biggest. I haven't been the biggest Witkoff fan. Just essentially every time he goes to Russia and they broker a deal of some sorts, Russia ends up the second he leaves, sending in like missiles into the Ukraine. I'm not a huge But with that being said, there are no experts right now on the situation. I don't think anybody could be an expert on Iran right now because of it's such a fluid type of situation of what it looks like. Even if you were to take out the Ayatollah, even if we were to find out all what their launch pads are and every single thing. And I hear people and I'm like, what do you know? Like, really, what do you know? I know one thing, Golan, that we have a chance to repair a mistake that was made 46, 47 years ago by the worst foreign policy president probably of our life, generational. I want to say of all time almost, which is Jimmy
I think you
Carter.
are right. Jimmy Carter was, to me, absolutely the worst of all time. And by the way, part of that, frankly, and I hate to make this comparison, is why I don't really trust Witkoff that much, because both Witkoff and Carter had this delusion that access equaled leverage. They go in, they're like, they'll project friendliness. I'm here to help. I'm here to make everything good for you too, as if that's a strategy. But in negotiations, that's not strength. That just feels like surrender, and you're the fool with a smile on your face while you're doing it. Carter, just like Witkoff, revealed too much, was too eager. If you think about any negotiation, right? Actual negotiation, what's the first rule of negotiation? The person who wants the deal more loses. If Witkoff goes in there, like, come on, we need this. I need to hand this back to Trump. Let's get a deal done. He's there going like, please, 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 like me. And adversaries can smell that instantly. And Carter was going in there too. Hey, I'm just here to represent, there's a whole country of Malays back there, but you guys I want to make a deal with. Let's do it. Come on. You don't soften hardened actors with vibes. And that's what they were both doing, one decades ago and one now. And I think it's the same reason why Carter failed. And I think it's the same reason why Witkoff is failing right now. So you're right. Nobody knows anything, but there's also a way to do it and a way not to do it.
Yeah, I just wanted to your point what you just brought up, because I was talking about this last night. I decided to watch this documentary because I have to watch documentaries for homework right now. So they redid another documentary on the 1980 U.S. hockey team, which is the greatest game ever played. It's the greatest sports story probably ever told. And I was a little nervous going on to watch this because I was like, how are they going to show this and make it somehow really badly political? And they didn't at all. And
Okay.
it was semi worth the watch. Man, I feel like there's a massive malaise, to use that word, which is which was a big word in the 70s. Obviously, we were suffering through a malaise, and we had a crisis of confidence, and as Jimmy Carter stupidly said during a speech, and to the American people. And I feel like Trump realizes that the American people are not behind this. The American people, even in the Republican Party, have sort of lost that identity of being the big stick. And I got to tell you, part of it is very heartbreaking. it's heartbreaking to watch that we as a party, mistakes and all, we've always been the party that stood up to the aggressors. And we were proud of that. You know, it was Reagan that that helped end the Cold War. We were always the party that did that. And it's really heartbreaking to see that I don't think Trump has the political backing with Iran. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why he hasn't acted, man.
I tend to disagree with that. I think Americans are for peace through strength
Really?
overwhelmingly. They don't want
Peace
to
through
get into
strength
these.
as a sentence, or you actually think peace through strength on the world stage?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Keep going.
I don't think that the majority of Americans are interested in getting into these never ending wars, which every president before Trump did. Obama pulled out of Syria, which allowed ISIS to just flourish. Or was it Iraq? One of those two. Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, where women are now not allowed to study, participate, do anything. All women's rights are gone. They treat them just one level above a goat. I don't think the Americans are behind any of that.
But that's my point. That's exactly my point. So that's not peace through strength. That's no strength at all.
Well, that's the weakness. We saw that. We also saw getting into these never-ending wars, which is not peace through strength. It's regime change and the neocons trying to foster democracy in countries that just are incapable of doing it. Look at Egypt. Egypt would have fallen apart under democracy. Look at Gaza. They had democracy. They elected Hamas. Democracy does not work there. You need to have, and you know what?
Nobody's
It's not for us to impose it upon them. And I think that's where Trump comes from. He goes, I don't care about your internal politics on how you guys elect your governmental officials. If you want to have a monarchy, go for it. You want to have some sort of, strong man running the thing? We don't care as long as it aligns with our values, not necessarily our values, but our strategic goals in the region, right? We're not looking for wars. We're not looking for you to be invading your neighbors. And we're hoping that you will treat your citizens right. That's what it comes down to.
And by the way, Golan, I did not bring up any of those things.
Right.
I did not bring up any of those things. Obviously, I think more than anybody, Trump has learned from the past. But at the same time, we cannot be a victim of our past. And we can't be a victim of the mistakes that were made and the words of the forever wars and all those things. And even the trope that is neocon. And,
I just heard someone say
you
that.
meant Jew,
today.
Right? Just making sure.
Because that's what it refers to.
Yeah.
And
I tend to disagree with that.
I know you tend to disagree with that. You don't like dog whistles.
Yeah, I don't buy into the whole dog whistle thing, but okay, let's keep it going.
I mean, you and Dave Smith can have a conversation about that because
I'll just say a world without heroes doesn't become peaceful, it becomes predatory.
And Golan, that's sort of my point, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying let's put boots on the ground in Iran.
Of course not. And by the way, men, nobody's talking about where we do forever wars and boots on the ground and we're the ones doing regime change. Look what he just did in Venezuela. They got the head guy.
Venezuela was perfect.
Put the second one in command and said, I don't care who's going in, do your thing. And then, but if you do what he did and it affects America and it affects the rest of the world, probably going to do the same thing to you next. Just you, not your country. And then the next person will come in, as you said, men, and we'll keep doing that until the right one gets into office. That's the same thing without us having to do all the rest of it.
I could almost guarantee you if the Venezuela situation were a little different, and again, it wasn't a surprise attack, you would have had, I mean, we all saw the ad that Trump retruthed. It was really a bizarre thing. And it's something, David does an incredible job for us doing the YouTube shorts. And I want to say they're all about 30 or 40 seconds long because that's the attention span apparently.
Sometimes up to a minute, but yeah, about that.
Max. And I know men to watch the whole video, and he was the only one I know that saw the whole video that Trump posted on Truth Social by the Dilio people, where at the end of it, he said STFU, and he had a picture of Tucker, Candace, those brothers, and
the
somebody
Hodge
else.
twins.
The Hodge twins, Podge twins, whatever you want to say. And I could almost, that was great to see that he retruthed that. And it took till Friday morning.
Next time, Trump, start your video with 4 pictures and telling them
it wasn't
to
him,
STFU.
though.
I'm saying now that you know that the video is so effective, next time just tell them the STFU at the beginning of the video and then explain why.
It was the Dilio team.
Yeah.
And good job on it. And my bigger point being, Golan, is had people known that we were going to go and attack Venezuela, you would have heard Bannon, Tucker, everybody
The
say
same
this is going to
chorus.
create World War III. Everybody would have been Rand Pauling it and Thomas Masseying it. And,
100%.
that strike had to happen how it happened. And maybe that's what's going to happen with Iran. It's just going to be in the middle of the night, like I've said, and we'll see a plume of smoke, because that's the only way Trump could act right now with listen, I'm not advocating for any sort of war. I'm advocating for American dominance. So when Trump talks about buying Greenland, when he does the Venezuela thing, it's American exceptionalism again. It's taking out the malaise that we've gotten into and being proud to be an American and what we stand for. That is sorely lacking in today's society. We are the big stick, and we are not going to abdicate that. And it's tiring watching us abdicate what so many people died to build. And so, yeah, that's just my take on it.
Look, I think you can't build an entire society that is meant to be the hegemon against the world, which, sorry, I know that a lot of people don't like it because they're like, I just want to know what's happening in my backyard. And I'm going to pretend like if someone else's roof is on fire, it's not going to spread to my roof, as I always talk about. But the tragedy is that a country that once understood this idea better than anyone, that we do have to be the big stick sometimes, now seems almost embarrassed by the role. And that's not how you keep darkness in check.
Mend.
So 2 things. One,
You could do 3 if you want.
the video that Trump put out was excellent.
Mhm.
I reposted on X, retruthed it, fantastic. And it was great. And it's kind of like a shot across the bow to that entire group that is trying to restructure and recreate the American right, conservatism. There was a guy back to the neoconservatives. Neil Ferguson was on the Call Me Back podcast. And I don't think Neil Ferguson is an anti-Semite. And I don't think the Call Me Back podcast would have someone on that would be like that. And he used that term. So are you going to say that that's a trope when he used it? I just don't get it.
Used neocon?
Neocons. Yeah.
Is that what you're
talking
talking
about? Just say that again.
But hang on. You have to be honest. You have to be honest about who's saying it and when they're saying it and how they're saying it. When you have someone who is talking about neocon in the initial traditional sense, the original definitional kind of sense, that's different than the way it is being used by all the woke Reich people right now. When Tucker says neocon, he doesn't mean neocon. When what's his name, the Rumpelstiltskin Nazi, what's his name, Nick Fuentes says neocon, he doesn't mean neocon in the traditional sense. They mean Jews. When Candace says neocon, she means Jews.
Let me just say the separation between quickly. Here's the problem: when Mend is saying it, and I've used the word in the past. This is not a knock on Mend in any way.
That's right.
I understand 100% who he's referring to and what he's talking about.
That's right.
When Dave Smith, when the Rogan, when the Ian Carrolls, when all these crazy people use it, they are using it in that way. They are going back. The first person that was called a neocon was Irving Kristol, right? Irving Kristol.
Do you see the 15-minute explanation you're giving on how and when it fits? You've already lost the point. So I rest my case.
First of all,
I'm going to say
my definition.
I was trying to defend you.
I know, but there's enough things that Fuentes says and Tucker says that shows who they are and their hatred of America.
The problem is when they obfuscate what they're saying,
embracing
and who they are.
You don't have to add this other thing and go, oh,
you don't have
that's
to add
a dog whistle.
Well, what are you talking about? The whole point of what they're doing is continually dog whistling stuff so those who don't see the obvious racism and assholery that they peddle in are thinking, oh, this makes sense. I know that term. It's a political term.
So
they must be saying something legitimate.
But you know what the difference is? We're here to you know what the difference is? We're here to discuss something. We're not giving it the 30-second context. So we're saying to you, when you use that word or when people use that word, what that is a dog whistle. However you want to say it. I'm not saying to you
I don't buy dog whistles. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it on any side.
I don't want to hear nobody. Wait, I just want to understand. Do you not believe in the concept or do you just decide to ignore them?
I'm ignoring it. I think it's a slippery slope.
You're ignoring
I think there's enough actual concrete things that you could point at. When Tucker Carlson says that Winston Churchill was a villain and Hitler was the good guy, what do you need more? Do you need another dog whistle on top of that? He already said that. When Nick Fuentes says Hail Hitler and he loves the guy, do you really need to talk about a dog whistle about a neoconservative?
You do, and I'll tell you why you do. Because there are plenty of people who didn't hear the Heil Hitler part And there are plenty of people who are now hearing him speak when he goes on all of these podcasts and doesn't say Heil Hitler. All these people that are interviewing him where he signs, he's on Steven Crowder, or he's on Tucker, or he's on all these places that are quote unquote legitimate outlets. And now he sounds kind of reasonable because he's not saying Heil Hitler. He's saying neocon. So for all those people who didn't watch his actual Hitler-Rama show that now don't know that, you're thinking they should just ignore it. And to those people, he sounds reasonable. So follow him. Ignore
I
the
hear
dog
what you're
whistles?
saying, and what I'm going to counter with, I'm going to say is that it has the potential, when you call out dog whistles and you call out these murky things, it has the potential to do more harm than good, because people are just going to look at you and go, look, these guys are hysterical. Everything is a dog whistle to them. When there's actual concrete things that you could point at and say, look, the guy praised Hitler. You don't need anything
I didn't
else.
see that.
Huh?
I watched Tucker. He didn't say Heil Hitler once.
No, Tucker says that
In fact,
Hitler
Tucker asked
wasn't
him
the
and he said,
villain,
I don't love
and
Hitler.
Tucker says Hitler wasn't the villain.
No,
I
I'm
think
talking about
I think that was Ian Carroll that
when
actually
Nick
said that.
Fuentes was on Tucker. He asked him, hey, there's been a lot of questions about you loving Hitler. Do you love Hitler? Steven Crowder asked him the same question. He goes, no, of course not. What are you talking about? I don't love Hitler. I do dislike all these neocons, but of course I don't like Hitler. Okay, so now you're lying, man, because I didn't watch Nick's daily show where he was talking about hitting women and saying, I didn't watch that. You want me to go watch his show
I've seen
now
a
in order
million
to
clips
believe
of
you?
that guy praising
So
Hitler.
now I got to go watch clips. You see what I'm saying, men? You're forcing me to do far more than just point out the hypocrisy. You're asking me to go watch his show and go watch clips in order to be convinced of it. I think you're putting your head in the sand when it comes to some of this stuff by pretending they don't exist.
To me, dog whistles is silence is violence. It's all wrapped up in someone's interpretation of stuff when there's enough concrete evidence out there to actually point to. That's all I'm saying. I'm not even ragging on you for saying that. I'm saying I don't buy into it. I don't.
It's not a matter of what you buy into or not. I'm just trying to give you. Forget about if I have to give you an explanation for 15 seconds. People are listening to us for a little longer than 15 seconds. I'm trying to give you the etymology of it and why it's actually where it comes from and why it's being used. If you want to use it, go ahead. If you want to say retard, knock yourself silly. You could say whatever you want. I'm just trying to tell you the origins of that word are laced idiotically with Jews.
So for me, when it comes to racism, anti-Semitism, or anything else, I point out the concrete items and I don't go down the slippery slope of things that could be dual use, misinterpreted, dual meaning.
So then why say it? If somebody says to you the word has a really bad connotation, has that type of connotation, why use it?
Why use the word like neocon?
Yeah.
George
You
Bush
could use
was
anything
a neocon.
else.
Dick Cheney was a neocon. These guys thought that they could go in and do regime change and create democracy, and it worked out terribly.
You are giving permission for the people who have now realized people like you will not that you don't believe in it, that you ignore dog whistles, that then they can say, no, I'm not talking about Jews. I'm talking about bankers. I'm talking about globalists. I'm talking about elites. I'm talking about even Zionists, or I'm talking about neocons or any of this other stuff. All the dog whistles. And now none of them are saying anything negative. And now you've got the elders of Zion in full control right now. Ignoring dog whistles is dangerous. And it's dangerous to even say what you're saying because you're normalizing ideas that people would otherwise reject. Once they're normalized, those ideas start shaping policy. They start shaping culture. They start advocating for violence because we're not talking about the Jews. We're talking about the neocons. We're talking about the globalists. And then you are ignoring it, but the people hearing it are not. So now you're lowering the social immune system.
So when Sir Neil Ferguson used it on the Call Me Back podcast, was he normalizing it?
I'm going to use a good example. The word shyster. Okay, it is typically known as a derogatory Jewish term. It's slang. It's extremely derogatory. Have people used it? Do they know what it always means? No. I'm not. I think President Trump has used the word. I think other people have used the word.
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind they have no malice or anything behind that word. But at the end of the day, there are calling somebody a wop or a guinea or whatever those words are, or Mick, whatever they are, they're derogatory terms. Whether you decide whether somebody knows that or not, that's on them. But they are derogatory words. We're just giving you saying this is the etymology of the word. I understand what you're saying.
And sometimes being aware of what the word has evolved to mean is important too, because it doesn't mean they didn't have an original context, right? It doesn't mean that just the use of the word automatically makes the speaker racist or anti-Semitic or whatever. because dog whistles don't always have a dog whistle connotation. Neocon still has a real legitimate definition. So, like you said, when Niall Ferguson says it, he doesn't mean Jews. It can mean something about a specific foreign policy
Right.
ideology.
Him
It
and
can mean
Dave Smith have totally separate meanings
exactly, but you
of the word
can't be so
neocon.
intellectually devoid that you are saying because one guy said it
That's not what
meant
I'm
it,
doing.
I'm going to ignore when the people who clearly don't mean it that way are saying it. We have to be aware of it. And we have to let the audience be aware of it so they know when they're being given bad faith arguments.
So I'm not saying that I disagree that when some people use it, what they mean. What I'm saying is that when you go down this slippery slope
Of
of
calling
dual use
everything, I get it.
means,
I agree with you, man.
a lot
We
of
both
people,
agree
a
with
lot of
you.
sane people will look at you and say, this guy's hysterical.
Yeah.
Everything is a dog whistle to him. And I
I
don't
have this
personally, you can, that's fine. And I'm not judging you for doing it. I'm telling you in my little rule book, I don't do that.
But here's the difference. We're not this is what we're saying to you is in a conversation that we're having where it comes from. I'm not trying to say I'm not going to go out there and say if somebody says the word neocon, I'm not going to go anti-Semite. That's just not what I'm going to say. If somebody uses a certain word bend, I'm not going to say anti-Semite. If somebody says forever war, I'm not going to go pansy. I'm not going to or grifter. I'm not going to. I'm talking about. I want people to learn where certain things come from. Whether you want to take that or not, that's a different story. But I agree with you. Not every time somebody uses the word neocon, I'm going to go, hey, you're an anti Semite. It's the farthest thing that I would do because I agree with you.
But we
You
do
say
know
these
that,
things
like
enough.
the protocols of the elders of Zion, they didn't say Jews. They said bankers and they said globalists. So again, we know that there are certain people who are using good faith, certain people are not. And we have to be aware of those who are trying to appropriate language in order to sway policy or in order to sway public perception. And if we don't give people the tools, if we're like, don't worry about it until they say Jew or Hitler, you can ignore it, then that's how we're really going to get into trouble because they also evolve. They recognize if you make a policy like that, they're like, hey, all of us over here in the Fourth Reich, don't say Jew anymore. Candace, you're saying Jew too much. Say globalist. And now they can't come after you and no one's going to call you an anti Semite anymore. And then you can take over because now you seem reasonable because globalist has a real meaning. And so we're just going to ignore everything. You have to at least give the people tools. Then they can use their cerebral cortex to determine this moment is a problem. This moment is not. This person is a problem. This person is not. If you don't do that, you're not giving them the tools they need by which to discern those things. That's all I'm saying.
I hear it. I think it's important to point out what you're pointing out, that some people do use it as a derogatory term. And then me personally, I brush that aside. Not when Dave Smith or Fuentes is using it. You hear it, but I don't focus in on that. And I focus in on the rest of the substance of what all the other lies that they're telling, because it's demonstrably provable.
We're not by the way, nobody's disagreeing with you. Okay. I agree with you 100%. There was a person that came out with a statement this weekend that I said to go on immediately once the statement came out. Why does he have to say this? And why does he have to, turn off the comments in his comment section? And it pissed me off. And I don't want to say his name out loud or the organization that we all agree should be demolished. Okay. Because I can't stand for this exact reason you're talking
It's a
about.
perfect example.
And,
Perfect
but again,
example. That
but,
guy.
But again, so we're in agreement on this. I'm just trying to explain where words come from sometimes.
I don't do that. That's the job of the lefties. It's not my
Right.
job.
That's not what we're
That's not what we're advocating
saying.
for. What we're saying is when someone is laundering bad ideas via subterfugic speech, you have to understand what that subterfugic speech is going to be.
I also want people to understand the history of things. Okay. I want people to understand that it doesn't have to be just about this. We discuss things in historical. Correct. Yeah. I mean, you've brought up 47 years of the Middle East. I love when you do it. I love when you talk about, Israel since its formation. I love when you do it. I learn history. People need to learn the history of certain things, whether they be words, geography, whatever it is. It's important, and then come up with your own decision. But no, none of us are going to scream at Dave Smith, hey, stop using the word, whatever. There are far worse things that have come out of Dave Smith, Nick Fuentes, and every single one of these people's mouths.
Well, but and also I want to point out something. And I think it's important to understand this as well, because we've seen this historically burn out of control. a long time ago when the Palestinians were still yet to be called Palestinians and they were trying to get everyone to hate the Jews. They kept telling everyone, Jews, Jews, Jews. And guess what happened? People were not coming to work with them to fight the Jews. They didn't care. So when they redefined Zionist from a movement to a people and they relabeled the Jews as Zionists, right? That's when the Islamism movement started to reframe it as a timeless global conspiracy. It started to reframe them as the metaphysical kind of a manifestation of evil as an inherited trait, not a political position. And that's when the group started coming to work with them. That was a dog whistle too, just like it is today. They've been using that term since the day Jew didn't work and Zionist did. It got them to bypass religious prohibitions and get people to attack because now it was about colonialists trying to take over our land, all of that. Nobody like us was there to say, they don't mean Zionists, they mean Jews. And perhaps if we had been there, there would have been a way to stop what eventually burned out of control and now has become something that just is a doctrine within that community.
But again, as we got to wrap up.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, man. What you're bringing up, we agree. We're not disagreeing with you whatsoever. But I also hate the dog whistle of forever wars. I hate the dog whistle of a lot of things because they have been used by a lot of people to
regime
grift off of.
change.
Regime change.
You know,
that's another one.
I'm going to disagree with you that forever war is a dog whistle. I don't know what we're whistling at with that one, but I think all of us agree that
You don't think people use the term forever war to scare people off from doing any kind of military action?
no, maybe I don't know what. There are some people that are just pacifists and they don't want any war.
No. We're
I'm-
referring to the same specific people that we're talking about through this whole through this whole thing, who Trump told to STFU. They have made a living and a killing off the term forever war and regime change. They have made a mint. An empire has been built off of them saying this.
Well,
that's what I'm
because
referring to.
We had 20 years of neoconservatives, neocons, running the government that thought that they could do those things, and they got thousands of Americans killed, billions of dollars wasted, if not trillions, and zero results. Taliban is still running Afghanistan. Iraq is still a mess. It's full of militias that hate us.
No, but
It's gone nowhere.
wait, to clarify, we don't disagree with you in terms of when a forever war actually exists. We're talking about how the phrase can be weaponized, right? If you're talking about trying to deter leadership through moral intimidation by using a phrase that doesn't apply, that's what we're talking about. It's used preemptively. It's not used descriptively. They're saying you even wanting to do anything militarily is potentially a forever war. And now, because we know forever war is one of those things that everybody opposes, it's like, maybe I better not do anything at all. No intervention can be done because you're accusing me of launching a forever war.
It was used as a dog whistle by Bannon, by Tucker Carlson, by everybody when we went to bomb Iran.
And
Not
it's
a dog
a
whistle.
political veto.
Not a dog whistle. They were using it as a fear tactic.
But what's the difference? It's creating a political veto on force. That's
what
the
I just
same
said.
thing.
A dog whistle is where you're like, neoconservative is really Jew.
No, and forever war is really
means
military
wink,
force.
wink, 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 boots on the ground when nobody ever has brought up boots on the ground.
They did the same thing
you
with
heard
Israel,
it with
by
Israel
the way.
boots on the ground. You heard it with
That's right.
Iran boots on the ground. You heard it from the same people. Wink, wink, and it's the same thing.
Any use of force
It's not the same thing
inevitably
because
spirals
they
into forever war.
They fear-mongered the public with this term forever war, and Trump went in and finished it in 25 minutes. So it just makes them look like idiots.
He ignored their dog whistle, but they still used it.
So when Neil Ferguson, the way he used the term, he goes, the Trump people, by and large, are anti-neoconservative. Does that mean they all hate Jews?
No, as we discussed, you have to be able to use your brain to determine whether he means the original definition or he's using it as a dog whistle.
Right. So
Same thing we've said over and
that's
over
all I'm
again.
saying is that's where it gets,
as
it
we
gets that's where it gets complicated.
What, you can't use your brain? I don't understand what your argument is. People can't use their brain?
My argument is that there's enough concrete evidence by a lot of these people that they are anti-America, pro-Qatar, anti-Jew, anti-Israel, anti-Christian, right? There's enough that they've said when Tucker came out and said that, Christian Zionists are the most despicable thing on the earth or whatever. You're like, okay, so he's anti-Christian. That's what he is, because he's now
Oh, he's
pro-Qatar. He's
anti-Christian
pro-Islam.
Zionist. If you're ignoring dog whistles, it's anti-Christian Zionist.
If you're ignoring dog whistles, you can't say Christian Zionist?
Then you're saying he's anti-Christian Zionist. You're not reading more into it. If you're not reading more into what he's saying, then you're ignoring dog whistles. Louis C.K. had an entire routine where he said, Jew's an interesting word because it's also a word that means a person who is Jewish and also a slur. And it all depends on how you mean it. And so listen to that routine, because that is a perfect example of how dog whistles can be used. You can say, no, I just said Jew.
And again,
Yeah,
like I've
but we
always
know how
said,
you
you
meant
got,
it.
It's fine.
but it's also, I just want to end on like something I've been saying throughout the show. Take yourself out of the equation, okay? Not everybody does the studying you do, man. Not everybody does the background, all the things that you do, not just to prepare for the show, to prepare yourself for life, to prepare your children for life, and to prepare when you get into arguments online with people, which you do. Okay. So not everybody does the background on what you need, what you do. So you really can't put yourself in the equation. Okay. I don't know who this Ferguson guy is. I'm sure he meant no malice behind it. And I don't particularly care that he used the word. I don't. I know when Dave Smith says it, what he means. Am I going to go, is that what I'm going to get stuck on? No. I'm going to get stuck on the part where Ian Carroll gets on and says that we should have sided, or whoever it was that what Mersheimer, whoever they used, that we should have sided with Hitler instead and not Stalin, and so on and so forth. So yes, I'm not getting lost in the muck and the mire of that.
That's all I was trying to say. I stay away from it because it's too slippery.
I
You say
understand.
dog whistle, and they go, no, I didn't mean that. I actually meant the guys that got us into those, the Iraq War. It was all neoconservatives, and there was. And most of them weren't Jews.
When Dave Smith talks about it, he actually brings up Jews. That got us into the...
and actually,
Dave
so do all
Smith's
the
an
other people who say it in the negative way.
Just so you know, they all bring up Jews, and that was what Douglas Murray said. How come everything ends with a bird or an with, or whatever it was that he said to Dave Smith when he did it that day. So it was like, that's the prime example. It's like, look, you've read the Alex Jones comment section, right? We all have. I mean, like that's the most interesting. Right. I thought you did. But it all ends up, if you read anything in the Alex Jones comment section, everything ends up with the Zionists, the Elders of Zion, or the Rothschilds. Go to any comment section on Alex Jones'
Well, that's where all the
website.
Conspiracies all lead to. They all lead to that.
Anyways, we have run out of time.
Right.
Don't want to push on this point. I do want people to, when you hear something, I think it's important to look at its etymology and make up your own decisions on it. And
got one clarification before we end. On the show 3 days ago, it was Tom Homan delivers something or other. You made a statement that says, Mendez brought up constantly on the show, if you want to know what's really going on, look at Al Jazeera. That's where you'll find what's going on. So I just want to add to that. You look at the rhetoric coming out of Al Jazeera, and if it's changed, if they're pro-West, then we'll know that they've changed. But don't rely on Al Jazeera because that is a heaping pile of trash.
I did hear that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. There is no facts coming out of AJ
really funny,
Plus or Al Jazeera.
Really funny.
It's a propaganda machine.
What's really funny is I brought that up last night on The World According to Ben Stein. I didn't say your name, but I did say a person I know that because the guest was on Al Jazeera and that I have on. Peter Roth is on Al Jazeera. And I was like, well, you're on American Al Jazeera. The way you could gauge things is by Al Jazeera Plus or whatever you want to call it over there. And he's like, no, that's the station I'm on. That's where he's
AJ
like...
Plus is geared at hip young kids, and they're just disseminating tons of vile
He's on
content.
AJ Plus, for real?
How many Al Jazeeras are there?
There's a few. A whole bunch.
There's Al Jazeera, straight up, which is Qatar, then which shares basically a lot of the same information as Al Jazeera, the U.S. Then AJ Plus is the young, hip, cool version of indoctrination.
No, he's not young, and he's not on the young and hip one.
Right.
He's on the one that's Al Jazeera out over there, not here.
He's on the one. Do you remember on the last episode or a couple episodes ago, I pointed out that a bunch of places were doing that. Israel agrees with the 70,000 thing that Gaza was talking. Remember that whole thing? And I debunked the entire thing. Al Jazeera is who started that. Al Jazeera is the one who puts up straight up lies and misinformation. They have their headline today.
Next time I will
and
remember.
I quote, just 5 Palestinian patients leave Gaza via Rafah amid 20 in dire need, which is absolutely horse ass. It is false information. That's the way they tell their stories. It's
I just
all
have
false
to give
narratives.
I just have to give a recap of last week's show now. So I compliment men, okay? Then you make and I get called out on it. Then you made a mistake about something and I correct the mistake because men pointed out the mistake you said about something he said. I get called out on it.
I
So
made a
I
mistake.
Yes. So no more quoting the dude when he's not here, because no good deed goes unpunished with that. But yes, Peter Roth, who's a great man, is on as Turbo. People watch
I'm a
cross watch, so
fan
they
of
saw
his. Yeah.
they saw the show last night. So yes, he often does analysis for Al Jazeera. So basically, the way it works is they have an Iranian asking him the question, and then it gets interpreted to Peter, and then Peter answers the question, and then it gets interpreted
Crazy.
in. And I said to him, "How do you know that?" I've said to him jokingly because he's a fantastic writer. I encourage everybody to find Peter Roth. He's fantastic. I was like, "How do you know you're not like the face of Al Jazeera over there, going, like just like where they're like misquoting every single
Right. The
thing, you
translations is
like
where the problem is. He's
right,
yelling
like death
Allah
to the
Akbar in Arabic while he's giving a great clear cake.
Yeah, right.
right? That's
There's an
that
article on Al Jazeera right now saying the actual official death toll in Iran is 3,000 people, and they're just Trump is lying about the tens of like it's kind of insane the level of misinformation and disinformation that just spews forth from this particular site. And I also
I
want to point out that I didn't make any mistakes last week.
I also said jokingly, I said to him at the beginning of the show, he's that you could find him at Hamas.com, and he didn't find it funny. Then he goes, "Is there a Hamas.com?" And I was like, and I said to him, "I'm not doing an internet search to find out if there's a Hamas.com. Okay, that's the last thing I want to type into my phone is there Hamas.com?" And but so I'm not encouraging anybody out there. Although tomorrow, if somebody wants to tell us what it says, please. On that note, I want to thank you both. I want to thank the people that are in our Rumble rants. You can find us there every day, daily at 1:30 Pacific time. You make the show fun. And somebody, we get so many nice compliments on Truth, but like one of the nicest compliments, I mean, came from some people that said today, it feels like I'm just sitting in my living room with people having coffee. I just think that's one of the nicest things. And and the beginning of Friday's show came from conversations I was having on Truth with people about movies. And they were asking me my favorite movies. And somebody was like, it
That was
meant a
great.
lot to them that our discussions were, because most people don't do that. Most people post and ghost and don't give a crap about what they're bringing in to the arena. And we do. And I care a lot about what people say, good or bad sometimes, and if we make mistakes. And so it's greatly appreciated. My conversation with Turbo and Dave and everybody, and my friend's daughter and my friend and everybody gets brought into the mix. So it's really greatly, and the conversations we have offline. So those are the nicest compliments. To say that you feel like you're just sitting with three people having coffee, such a great compliment of
That's awesome.
how we could build something. So thank you. You can find us everywhere. Don't forgive us to give us that five stars on Apple, which is so impossible for some people to find. And you can find us everywhere at thedailycheatsheet.com. I want to wish everybody good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.